What Johnny Cash is trying to do is let y'all know that I'm older than he is. Now, that's a mean thing for a man to do to his wife.
Country music has given the world some truly unforgettable names, but few have left a mark quite like Johnny Cash and Loretta Lynn. These were not just singers, they were legends who shaped an entire genre and touched the lives of millions of people across generations. But even people as famous as them carry stories that never make it into the spotlight. Some things are kept private, tucked away for years, waiting for the right moment. And for Loretta Lynn, that moment came when she was 80 years old. After years of staying quiet, she finally opened up about something that had been sitting with her for a long time. It was an experience she had inside Johnny Cash's own recording studio, a place full of history, memory, and music. Cash had passed away back in 2003, yet according to Loretta, it felt like he had never truly left. What she saw that day sent a chill through her that she could never quite explain away. Was it just her imagination running wild in an emotional place? Was it the kind of trick your mind plays when grief and memory blur together? Or was it something that goes beyond easy explanation? After staying silent for so long, Loretta Lynn finally shared the strange and moving truth about what she experienced that day, connected to the man in black. If you are new here and you enjoy stories about the real lives behind country music legends, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We share these kinds of deep dives regularly, and you would not want to miss them. Now, let us get into the full story of Loretta Lynn, from the very beginning. Loretta Lynn's life did not start with record deals or standing ovations. It started in hardship, deep in the hills of eastern Kentucky, in a small community called Butcher Holler. This was a place tucked inside a coal mining town called Van Leer, and life there was not just hard, it was a daily fight to make it through. The coal company had its hands in everything. They owned the houses the miners lived in. They owned the stores where families bought their food and supplies. They even paid the miners in their own company money, a system designed so that workers could barely get by and had almost no chance of getting ahead. Families like Loretta's were never really meant to climb out of that situation. The whole system was built to keep them exactly where they were. Loretta was the second of 8 children, and all of them grew up crammed into a tiny one-room cabin that was far too small for a family that size. There was no personal space, no room to breathe, no privacy of any kind. Until she was 9 years old, Loretta slept on the floor alongside her brothers and sisters. When she finally got a bed, it was placed in her parents' room, not exactly a step up in privacy. Winters were brutal. The thin walls of the cabin did little to keep out the cold. Food was never something the family could count on from day to day. Her mother worked constantly, stretching every single cent and every meal as far as it would go, doing everything in her power just to keep 8 children alive and fed. Then, illness came knocking. When Loretta was still a little girl, she developed a severe ear infection that kept getting worse instead of better. It reached a point where doctors had no choice but to drill holes into her head to try to save her hearing. For a small child, this was terrifying, and while she lay in a hospital bed trying to recover, her mother faced a different kind of battle. There was no money to pay for lodging near the hospital, so her mother walked 10 miles to the hospital every single day and 10 miles back home again just to be by her daughter's side. It was the kind of love and sacrifice that leaves a permanent mark on a person. By the time she was 12, Loretta found herself back in the hospital again, this time dealing with a serious infection in her leg that required many painful injections. Her cousin Marie stayed with her throughout the ordeal, trying to offer comfort. But even in the middle of all that suffering, something absurd happened. A nurse accidentally gave Marie one of the injections that was meant for Loretta. Even her moments of pain had an unexpected twist to them. Life in Butcher Holler had a way of being unpredictable, right up until the end. Back home between those hospital stays, Loretta did not get to enjoy a typical childhood. She was shouldering responsibilities that most grown women would find overwhelming. While her parents worked themselves to exhaustion, Loretta became a second mother to her younger siblings. She fed them, kept an eye on them, and rocked them to sleep at night. But those quiet evening hours on the porch turned into something more than a chore. That was where she first started to sing. As she soothed her brothers and sisters, her voice would drift out into the cool mountain air. Her father used to joke that her powerful voice was loud enough to make her baby brother go deaf. But beyond their small cabin, other people were noticing too. A neighbor later told her that he would stop whatever he was doing outside just to listen to her voice carrying across the hills. That simple moment of appreciation meant more to Loretta probably than people realized at the time. Loretta always said she married at the age of 13, though documents later revealed she was likely 15 when she wed Oliver Doolittle. Still, 15 was incredibly young by any standard, even if early marriage was more common in the Appalachian region during that era. Kentucky law actually allowed underage marriages under certain conditions, and that rule stayed on the books right up until 2018. In the world Loretta grew up in, marrying young was not considered shocking. It was simply what happened. But her parents weren't on board from the start. Her mother refused to sign the papers and didn't even attend the wedding. Her father never warmed up to Doolittle either. The doubts were already there before the wedding even took place. Doolittle had made promises. He told her he would never raise a hand to her and that he would never take her away from Holler. Her family, he broke both of those promises almost immediately. Loretta was still a teenager, and by her own admission, she had no real idea what marriage was supposed to mean. The reality hit fast, and it hit hard. Just hours after the wedding, he struck her for the first time. It happened over a silly joke, a word she had used without even knowing what it meant. What had started as playful teasing ended in violence, and that moment set the tone for what was to come. There were more incidents over the years. Tempers flared, things were thrown. At one point, Loretta fought back in panic and accidentally knocked out some of his teeth. Over time, she made a decision. If he hit her, she would hit him back. It was not how she had imagined her marriage would be, but it was how she learned to survive it. There is a certain irony in the fact that it was Doolittle who pushed Loretta toward a singing career. He told her she was every bit as talented as the women making money down in Nashville, and that they deserved their share of that world too. In the early days, Loretta did not have much say in the matter. Doolittle decided she would sing for 2 years, they would make enough to buy a house, and then she would quit. 2 years came and went, and nothing stopped. She was constantly on the road, running on very little sleep and even less food, and still letting him call the shots. That was just the way things worked between them at the time. As the years passed and her fame grew, so did her confidence. She started speaking up when something felt wrong. But Doolittle's drinking continued to make everything harder. He would disappear for days at a stretch, sometimes even weeks, and Loretta would be left at home waiting and wondering when he would show up again. When he did come back, he was usually still drunk, and the fighting would start all over. In a strange way, being out on the road started to feel more like home than being at home. At least on tour, she knew what to expect. Out of all that pain came some of her most honest and powerful music. Loretta put everything she was feeling into her songs, and the result was music that connected deeply with women all across the country. Her famous song, "Don't Come Home A-Drinkin' with Lovin' on Your Mind," came directly from those long nights of waiting for Doolittle to walk through the door. He used to try to figure out which songs were about him. According to Loretta, almost all of them were. That particular song did more than just become a hit. It won her Female Vocalist of the Year at the very first Country Music Association Awards in 1967, and even earned her a Grammy nomination. Before Loretta's career ever took off, the red flags about Doolittle were already visible to people around her. Whispers about his reputation followed him, and her parents had never trusted him. Their gut feelings turned out to be right. Not long after the wedding, while Loretta was pregnant with their first child, Doolittle left her for another woman and sent her back to her parents' home. When he came back asking for forgiveness, her father was furious, particularly when Loretta chose to take him back. After giving birth, she stepped right into the exhausting reality of new motherhood with almost no support. She washed cloth diapers by hand, she hauled water herself, she carried the household practically on her own. Doolittle's affairs continued throughout their marriage, including one involving Loretta's own sister-in-law. But Loretta was never the kind of woman to stay quiet and just absorb the humiliation. She once recalled a time when her daughter came home and said the tour bus driver was claiming to be seeing her father. Loretta did not hesitate. She found the woman and confronted her, dragging her by the hair. Her size did not matter. What mattered was the fire inside her, and that same fire had a way of finding its way into her music. Her song Fist City was not just a catchy tune, it was a direct warning aimed at a woman in Tennessee who had been openly flirting with Doolittle while Loretta was performing, on stage right in front of her. Through the song, she made it perfectly clear what would happen if the woman did not back off. After her second child, Loretta suffered 2 miscarriages and came dangerously close to losing her life from blood poisoning. With no money for proper hospital care, she stayed at home getting weaker and weaker until doctors finally realized how serious the situation had become. It was nearly too late by that point. When she became pregnant with her third baby, she needed a cesarean section, but Doolittle was away logging and there was no way to reach him. He couldn't sign the hospital paperwork, so Loretta went through labor in surgery alone, frightened and heavily medicated. Those experiences directly fueled her songwriting. Her song One's on the Way captured the bone-deep exhaustion of constant pregnancies and raising children without a partner who was truly present. By the age of 22, Loretta already had 4 children. She tried to take steps to slow things down, hoping to prevent more pregnancies. But around that same time, Doolittle moved the whole family from Kentucky all the way to Washington State, cutting her off to everyone she had grown up with. He would then disappear for weeks at a time, leaving her alone with 4 small children in a place where she knew no one. At one point, they were so desperately poor that Loretta and her kids survived by eating dandelions for nearly 2 weeks. She wanted to go back home to Kentucky, but traveling 3,000 miles with 4 children and no money felt impossible. Then she discovered she was pregnant again, and not just with 1 baby, but with twins. Rather than joy, she felt completely overwhelmed. Her singing career was just starting to gain real momentum. She cried often during that pregnancy, torn between the life that was opening up in front of her and the weight of the life she was already carrying. When the twins were born, Loretta called it a happy day, but her home life did not magically improve just because she was becoming famous. Doolittle still did not step up the way a father and husband should. Rather than being present, he hired a housekeeper to cover the domestic side of things. Her daughter Betty Sue later remembered sobbing for her mother while Loretta was away on tour. Loretta herself admitted that leaving her children behind was the most painful thing about pursuing her career. Out of that tension came one of her most controversial songs ever recorded. The Pill addressed the physical and emotional exhaustion of endless pregnancies in plain, honest terms. By today's standards, it might seem fairly mild, but in the early 1970s, it caused a genuine uproar. More than 60 radio stations refused to play it. A preacher in Kentucky condemned it from his pulpit. The Grand Ole Opry reportedly held a 3-hour meeting after Loretta performed it 3 times in one night. When she heard there was talk of stopping her from singing it, she made it very clear she would not quietly accept anyone else's rules. And the backlash, if anything, only made more people want to hear it. The record was selling 15,000 copies every week, and women all over the country were listening to every word. By the mid-1970s, Loretta Lynn was no longer just a popular singer. She was the defining female voice of country music. In 1972, she made history by becoming the first woman ever named Entertainer of the Year by the Country Music Association. She went on to win Female Vocalist of the Year 3 times in 4 years from the Academy of Country Music. In 1976, she published her autobiography, Coal Miner's Daughter, and it quickly became a bestseller. 4 years later, the book was turned into a film of the same name. Sissy Spacek played Loretta with such authenticity and depth that she won an Academy Award for the role. Loretta's last top 10 hit came in 1982, followed by her final top 40 single in 1985. She slowed down in the studio after that, but she kept touring, kept connecting with fans, and kept receiving honors. In 1988, she was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. Then in 1993, she joined Dolly Parton and Tammy Wynette to record Honky Tonk Angels, a celebration of three country legends who had each carved out their own permanent place in the genre. In 2000, she released Still Country, proving her voice and her spirit were still as strong as ever. In 2004, she teamed up with Jack White of the White Stripes to record Van Leer Rose. The project was raw, honest, and deeply rooted in old-school country. Loretta wrote all 13 tracks herself and proudly called it the most country record she had ever made. Critics loved it, fans embraced it. It won a Grammy for Best Country Album, and the duet Portland, Oregon won a separate Grammy for Best Country Collaboration. The honors kept coming. She received the Kennedy Center Honors in 2003. She was given a Lifetime Achievement Grammy in 2010, and in 2013, she was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, one of the highest civilian honors in the United States. Few artists in any genre have reshaped their field the way she did. In 2016, she released Full Circle, a reflective album that blended her roots with both old favorites and fresh material. It felt like a quiet but powerful celebration of a career that had rewritten the rulebook for women in country music. And it was during those recording sessions for Full Circle that the moment happened, the moment she never forgot. Loretta was recording in a studio that carried enormous weight. It was the cabin studio that Johnny Cash had built for himself back in 1978 in Hendersonville, just outside Nashville. Cash had constructed it as a private place to write and create, separate from everything else. It sat across from the home where he had once, famously, kept exotic animals, including zebras and ostriches, on the property. Over the years, the cabin evolved. June Carter's sister Anita moved in during the early 1990s and set up a simple recording setup. Then in 1992, Johnny Cash met legendary producer Rick Rubin and launched the now iconic American Recording Series, which revived Cash's career and introduced him to an entirely new generation of fans. Although only some of those sessions happened in the cabin itself, the space gradually became central to his creative life. It was not just a building, it was sacred ground. Loretta had always felt a deep connection to Johnny Cash and to June Carter Cash. She often said the Carter family's music was among the first sounds that truly shaped her as an artist. So when Johnny and June both passed away within months of each other in 2003, the loss was felt personally and deeply. In the years that followed, she grew especially close to their son, John Carter Cash. He later shared that Loretta had helped him get through that incredibly painful chapter. And in time, he would return the favor by producing several of her later albums. Working in his father's old cabin must have felt like a tribute and a reunion. During one of the sessions for Full Circle, Loretta was singing one of Johnny Cash's songs inside that cabin. The light was dim, the way old studio spaces often are, warm and a little shadowy. She glanced up from what she was doing and saw what appeared to be a man in a gray suit walking through the door. The figure looked exactly like Johnny Cash. She stopped mid-song, visibly shaken, and said out loud that she could have sworn she had just seen him walk in.
Whether it was memory or the power of being in a space so filled with his presence, or something that goes beyond easy explanation, the experience stayed with Loretta for the rest of her life. It was not entirely out of character for strange things to find their way into her story. Her home at Hurricane Mills, Tennessee, had long been the subject of rumors and reported sightings. People talked about ghostly Civil War soldiers wandering the grounds, mysterious women appearing on balconies, and shadowy figures drifting through the halls of the house. Loretta had even turned those stories into music years earlier with her 1964 song, This Haunted House. So when she thought she glimpsed Johnny Cash stepping into the studio, it did not feel like such a stretch. Maybe her mind was playing with memory in a deeply emotional place. Or maybe, as some who knew her might quietly believe, the man in black simply wanted to hear her sing one more time. But in her final years, the real challenges were far more grounded and physical. In 2017, shortly after her 85th birthday, Loretta suffered a stroke and was hospitalized in Nashville after collapsing at her home in Hurricane Mills. She was responsive, and doctors expected her to recover, but she had to cancel upcoming tour dates. When she spoke about it later, she said the thing that scared her most was not the stroke itself, it was the fear that she might never be able to sing again. For Loretta, singing was not a career, it was who she was at her core. As she worked to get her strength back, another setback arrived. In 2018, she broke her hip, making the road to recovery even longer and steeper. Some people began to wonder quietly whether this was the beginning of the end. Loretta refused to accept that. She told people she could move her arms, she was getting stronger, and yes, she could still sing. Tabloids tried to paint a bleaker picture. In 2019, one outlet published claims that her health was failing rapidly and that her family was already preparing for the worst. Loretta took matters into her own hands and answered those rumors herself in a direct Facebook video. She laughed at years of headlines that had declared her broke, finished, or even dead. She made it very clear she was very much alive and had no intention of being written off by anyone. Even in her late 80s, she kept creating. In 2021, at the age of 88, she released her 50th studio album, also called Still Woman Enough, sharing its name with her 2002 memoir. The album was a celebration of resilience and womanhood, and a tribute to the long road she had traveled. Her daughter, Patsy Lynn Russell, co-produced it, and noted how her mother was able to connect past and present with remarkable clarity. Loretta even drew a line between her 1966 anthem, You Ain't Woman Enough to Take My Man, and the new title track, reframing it not as a song about rivalry, but as a message of solidarity and strength. To her, it was never about tearing another woman down. It was always about surviving, standing firm, and standing together. The album revisited beloved classics like Coal Miner's Daughter and Honky Tonk Girl, while also introducing new material. It felt like she was flipping through the pages of her own life, adding new chapters to songs her fans had grown up loving, and once again she proved beyond any doubt that she was, without question, still woman enough. For this final chapter in the studio, Loretta did not stand alone. She brought together a circle of powerful women in country music, including Carrie Underwood, Reba McEntire, Margot Price, and Tanya Tucker. These were artists who had walked roads that Loretta helped pave. The project was not just a collection of songs, it was a statement. Loretta had always believed that women in country music needed to stand together rather than compete, and this record was the living proof of that belief. The title track delivered everything fans had always loved about her: honesty, backbone, and heart. She sang about being knocked down without being broken, about carrying scars without losing her softness. It was the same fearless voice that had once shocked radio stations and challenged an industry that was not always ready for what she had to say. Over the full course of her career, Loretta Lynn sold more than 45 million records. She earned multiple Grammy Awards. She received a Lifetime Achievement honor from CMT. She became the first woman to win Entertainer of the Year from the Country Music Association. Yet for all of those achievements, the awards were never the whole point for Loretta. She just wanted to keep writing songs for as long as she possibly could. Loretta Lynn passed away peacefully on October 4, 2022, at her beloved Tennessee ranch. She was 90 years old. She was laid to rest there on the property, beside her husband Doolittle, closing a love story that had been complicated, painful, and real, and that had quietly shaped so much of the music she made. Tributes came pouring in from every corner of the music world. Dolly Parton called her a sister. Shania Twain said Loretta had opened doors that made entire careers possible for women in country music. Carrie Underwood and many others shared personal memories that painted a picture of a woman full of humor, warmth, and a spirit that never let anything keep her down for long. In 2023, her family worked with the same firm that manages the legacy of Johnny Cash to ensure that her catalog, her name, and her influence would continue reaching new audiences for years to come. It felt right, somehow, that the two of them would end up linked even after death, their legacies cared for by the same hands.
From a tiny one-room cabin in the coal mining hills of Kentucky to the highest stages and honors that country music has to offer, Loretta Lynn did not just wear a crown, she built one from scratch, under conditions that would have stopped most people before they even got started. And even now, long after the final curtain, her songs remain exactly what they always were: bold, honest, and unmistakably hers.